This episode is brought to you by Nordstrom. Summer's almost out and fall's calling. Luckily, Nordstrom has everything you need for the season ahead, all under $100. Discover new arrivals from your favorite brands like Mango, Princess Polly, Wave, Free People, BDG, and more. Whether you're planning a last-minute getaway, heading back to class, or refreshing your office looks, you'll find the latest trends and beauty must-haves without breaking your budget. It's easy, too, with free shipping, free returns, and in-store order pickup. Shop today, in stores, and at Nordstrom.com.
At Chipotle, we also have a playlist. Guacamole as it's being hand-mashed. The sizzle of adobo chicken on the grill. The chopping of onions and cilantro. We call our playlist Real. Order now. Chipotle. For real.
The Stone Zone. Entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome. You are now entering the Stone Zone. Well, on July 2nd, the CIA Director, John Ratcliffe, released a report that included declassified documents that definitively proved that former CIA Director John Brennan insisted on including the so-called Steele dossier. That was a fabricated report that claimed that Donald Trump had dallied with Russian prostitutes in Moscow while there on a private business trip. Into the official intelligence assessment presented to President Barack Obama. He actually cleverly hid this by having it in a footnote, which was in itself classified. This proves that Brennan knowingly used what was essentially a false claim to justify the entire Russian collusion hoax. He also later testified that the Steele dossier played no role in the decision to issue FISA warrants to spy on Donald Trump and his campaign. That was clearly a lie under oath. And he would repeat it again as recently as last week. Then on July 18th, the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, declassified documents that she claimed revealed that former President Barack Obama and his administration officials manufactured and politicized intelligence to create the narrative of Russian interference in the 2016 campaign. These documents include a report and emails that prove that pre-election intelligence assessments concluded that Russia was not attempting to influence the election through cyber attacks, which Gabbard argued contradicted the January 2017 intelligence community assessment. In other words, they are busted. There is little question whatsoever that she subsequently revealed that there was a whistleblower within the intelligence community who was threatened that they were not to blow the whistle on this false narrative. They were promised a promotion if they remained silent. The result of the fake news media, or I should say the reaction, has been virtually a media blackout. In other words, trying to pretend this never happened. There's also a major effort to conflate Russian interference in the overall election with Russian interference that was alleged to have been designed to assist Donald Trump. The latter does not exist. Even the argument that they interfered in the overall election is centered around the expenditure of less than $200,000 for Facebook ads, the messaging of which was completely incoherent and inconsistent. In view of the fact that $5.9 billion was spent on the election efforts of both sides, that includes the candidates, super PACs, and the parties, obviously the Russian effort utilizing some kind of bot farm, where the messaging was sometimes pro-Trump, sometimes anti-Trump, sometimes pro-Clinton, sometimes anti-Clinton, was designed to sow chaos, but could not do so given the fact that it was a drop in the bucket. Some on the hard left are in denial, or the New York Times, for example, once a great journalistic outlet, today a propaganda arm of the Democrat National Committee, claims that the assertions by Gabbard and Ratcliffe are contentious. They claim that the declassified documents, including a 2020 House Intelligence Committee report, do not conclusively prove that Russian collusion narrative was a hoax or that Obama directly orchestrated a conspiracy. These folks are whistling past the graveyard. They also, of course, point to the 2017 House Intelligence Committee report, which I can tell you is a steaming crock of BS. It is a paste up of every false claim that is cut and paste from the Huffington Post or the Daily Beast as if these are facts. There are 5 different references to me in that report. None of them are even remotely accurate. So the real question, of course, is why is the fake news media, ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, trying to pretend that there still was Russian collusion? They point to the same 3 falsehoods. One we've already discussed, the so-called Russian bot farm, which had no effect on the outcome of the elections. Then there's the false claim that Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort shared polling data from the Trump campaign of Russian intelligence. The problem with that, of course, is that it's not true. On the date in question, the Trump campaign still had no proprietary polling information to share. But beyond that, the individual that Manafort shared entirely public polling data that could be found on the internet, Konstantin Kilimnik, is not a Russian intelligence asset, but in fact was a U.S. intelligence asset. That is proven by the independent journalist Matt Taibbi, but also proven in the redacted cables from our embassy in Kyiv. He was a trusted source for U.S. intelligence. Then, of course, there's the false claim that Roger Stone was in touch with Russian intelligence assets, specifically the persona of Guccifer 2.0, who I had a 28-word exchange with on Twitter direct messages. The problem with that is that innocuous exchange, I released it myself, bears no proof of Russian collusion, WikiLeaks collaboration, or any other crime. But more importantly, it took place 3 weeks after WikiLeaks had already published all of the DNC and Clinton data that was so very embarrassing for their campaign. There's little question about it that they are busted. And as has now been proven, this goes all the way to the top. We have declassified emails that show that Hillary Clinton herself reviewed and approved the specific plan to smear Donald Trump, to distract attention from her illegal email servers, and to cast doubt that his election was legitimate. The only question is whether Attorney General Pam Bondi will do the right thing and bring criminal charges against those involved. Now, there is a question as to whether Barack Obama has presidential immunity based on the Supreme Court decision of several months ago. But David Schoen, the criminal defense attorney who represented Trump quite ably in the impeachment, argues that Obama can still be impeached. And if he were impeached, even though he's no longer president, that would require articles of impeachment to pass the House and a 2/3 vote in the Senate. Unlikely, but at least theoretically possible, that Obama could be prosecuted. But Vice President Joe Biden has no immunity for his involvement in this corrupt, seditious scheme. So, National Security Advisor Susan Rice has no immunity. FBI Director James Comey, who lied repeatedly about this to Congress and also lied in his representations to the president, he has no immunity. CIA Director and admitted communist John Brennan has no immunity. Rod Rosenstein, let's not forget him, the acting Attorney General. The New York Times claimed that Rosenstein volunteered to his co-conspirators to wear a wire in a meeting with his boss, President Donald Trump, and then use the fruits of that recording to try to remove Trump under the 25th Amendment. When the New York Times published that story, Rosenstein vehemently denied it. Then, after Joe Biden was illicitly declared the winner of the 2020 election, Rosenstein came clean and said, no, actually, he had offered to do exactly that. So we can't forget Mr. Rosenstein when we look at this rogues gallery of those who should be prosecuted. The denial of those on the left is extraordinary. It's all over social media, but whether it is my alleged contact with Guccifer 2.0 or the efforts by the Russian bot farm or Paul Manafort's alleged giving polling information to a Russian intelligence asset, these are a cover story to cover the fact that they spent $30 million and had unprecedented legal power, an unlimited budget, and they found no evidence of Russian collusion to assist Donald Trump. In my own case, I feel vindicated because I was convicted in a Soviet-style show trial. You read online that I was convicted by a jury of my peers. I'm sorry, but 12 Trump-hating Democrats are not my peers. I am completely vindicated because, of course, since there was no Russian collusion, I had no motive to lie. And interestingly enough, Robert Mueller actually admitted that in his final report. The problem was that report was redacted. The judge in my case refused to provide it to my criminal defense attorneys, just as she refused to provide the famous CrowdStrikes memo. You see, that's the other leg of the Russian collusion stool. First, there's the Steele dossier, which we've talked about ad nauseum. But also then there's the false claim that the Democrat National Committee was the target of an online hack by Russian intelligence. I wanted to bring Bill Binney, I think universally recognized as the leading counterterrorism IT expert, formerly of the CIA, who could have provided both forensic evidence and expert testimony to prove that there was no online hack and that the data that proved so incredibly embarrassing to Hillary Clinton that was subsequently published by WikiLeaks was downloaded to some kind of portable drive and taken out the back door. Tulsi Gabbard has emerged here as a hero of the MAGA movement, and now there can no longer be any doubt whatsoever that Barack Obama and his cohorts involved in a seditious conspiracy that was the greatest single dirty trick in American political history. It was nothing less than the abuse of power in which the full authority of the United States government and the extraordinary capability of our intelligence agencies was used to try to unseat a duly elected president. It is the crime of the century, as President Donald Trump has said, and therefore I join those calling on Attorney General Pam Bondi to charge those who are responsible. Now, whether or not any of them can actually be convicted in the District of Columbia is an open question. Every single judge in that district is a hyper-partisan, Trump-hating Democrat, and they certainly don't hide it. The chances of getting a fair jury pool, that's de minimis as well. But the point here is, of course, that we cannot forget this, nor can we just pretend it did not happen. I am calling for justice. I think it is vitally important that we see arrests and prosecutions. Personally, I won't be happy until 29 heavily armed FBI agents show up in full SWAT gear, wearing night goggles and brandishing M4 assault weapons, surrounding the home of John Brennan with a Fox camera crew in tow. I think that would be very fitting. I look forward to his arrest on the same terms that I was arrested, because my lawyers talked to the special prosecutor's office the day before. All they had to do was tell me that I was a target and that I would be charged the next day. And of course, I would have turned myself in. But if I'd done that, I would not have had a chance to display my Roger Stone Did Nothing Wrong t-shirt, of which I sold about 15,000 to raise money for my legal defense. This is Roger Stone. You're listening to the Stone Zone. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. Well, Elon Musk famously had a falling out with President Donald Trump, announced that he was going to try to field his own party in the midterm elections. But did he really? Because throughout the month of June, Elon Musk, who, by the way, I very much admire, I'm very grateful to Elon Musk that I got my voice back on X, which used to be called Twitter. I was banned for no reason whatsoever in 2017. Subsequently banned for life on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and elsewhere. I actually didn't think I would ever be reinstated, but I filled out a form online, I sent it in, and then one day, wham, I was back. Now, at the time that they banned me, I had 980,000 followers. When I came back, I only had 25,000, but I fought my way back up to about 870,000 as of today. You can follow me, by the way, at Roger J. Stone Jr., Roger J. Stone Jr. That is, of course, the verified address. A bunch of Roger Stones there on X, but there's only one. Throughout the month of June, however, Elon Musk made $15 million worth of donations to entities connected to or supporting President Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Musk made two $5 million donations to top super PACs for House and Senate Republicans, as well as a $5 million donation to MAGA Inc., the principal Trump super PAC. That was only days ago. These donations come at the same time that Musk was publicly feuding with President Trump, going so far as to accuse the president briefly of being an Epstein collaborator, a charge that he later retracted. Musk has also given $45 million to his own super PAC, the America PAC, during the first 6 months of the year. He has not talked about the American Party, his idea for a new centrist third party, in several weeks. So does this mean that Musk has realized that his anger towards Trump was myopic and is back on the Trump train? Let's hope so. I think we are stronger with the Trump-Musk alliance. I think it is the most significant political alliance in American political history. Republicans can most definitely not take the midterms for granted, and as Musk, who was once slated to be the George Soros of the right, a term which he largely embraced, could be a key player in that election outcome. There's no doubt that Musk can sometimes be verbose and sometimes mercurial, but I do think he has the interests of the country at heart. And I would like to see him completely and totally reconcile with President Donald Trump and go back to doing what they do so well, draining the swamp. I give Elon Musk enormous credit for his Doge efforts to uncover not millions, not billions, but trillions of dollars of waste, fraud, and corruption in federal spending. But I'd like to see Elon Musk and President Donald Trump working together to make sure that waste, that fraud is ended, and those who are corrupt are brought to justice. You're listening to the Stone Zone, and we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back to the Stone Zone. Well, there's a big fight going on in Texas. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has issued an ultimatum to Texas Democrats. Abbott is threatening to remove Texas Democrats from their positions in the state legislature after they bolted out of the state in an attempt to prevent the legislature from obtaining the quorum needed to pass new congressional redistricting rules. Governor Abbott wrote, Democrats hatched a deliberate plan not to show up for work for the specific purpose of abdicating the duties of their office and thwarting the chamber's business. That amounts to an abandonment or forfeiture of elected state office. In addition to removal, Abbott said he believes Democrats may have committed felonies for soliciting funds to pay off their fines for abdicating their legislative duties. In other words, a form of bribery. President Trump has urged Texas to adopt a redistricting proposal that would create 5 additional strong Republican states in the U.S. Congress. Republicans are set to move that would flex their muscle and make it more difficult for Democrats to win during the upcoming midterms. That is what constituents demand from Republicans for decades. It's finally being realized because President Trump is at the helm. Democrats, of course, have no complaints when the census counts illegal immigrants who are not U.S. citizens and then uses those census figures for congressional redistricting, as they have done in both New York and California. No, that's perfectly all right. Now Texas Democrats are screaming about democracy. That's funny. The party that nominated Kamala Harris for president when she wasn't voted for by a single Democrat primary voter or a single Democrat caucus voter in a completely undemocratic process. It is amazing to hear the Texas Democrats squeal. Only 23% of Democrats view their own party now in a favorable light. A new AP NORC poll shows that only 23% of Democrats view their party in a favorable light, with 35% of Democrats describing their party in such terms as weak, tepid, apathetic, ineffective, and broken. In contrast, 41% of Republicans described their party in positive terms, while only 19% were critical of the GOP. A recent Wall Street Journal poll shows that the Democrat Party has sunk to a 35-year low in terms of its overall favorability. In response to these low numbers, Democrat National Committee Chair Ken Martin said, "We don't need to abandon our values. We've been the party fighting for the working class and the poor, but we are also the party that's always fought against discrimination, bigotry, harassment, and people being bullied out of the conversation." Let's not kid ourselves. You are the party of Wall Street. You are the party of big business. You are the party of big tech. And you're the party who has no regard for the U.S. Constitution. In other words, Democrats are unable to pivot out of their embrace of crazy woke nonsense because of their radicalized base will not allow them to do so. We need look no further than the Democrats' party nomination of the Ayatollah Mamdani in New York City. This is a guy who openly says that the way he's going to solve the city's problems is raising taxes on white people. He said it, I didn't. This is someone who also says he wants to defund the police. He says that he is opposed to cash bail, but he promises everybody free everything. It is, at the same time, an insensitivity in which he constantly talks about actualize the intifada. So he's clearly an anti-Semite, but that is what the Democrat Party produces today. I actually saw a poll yesterday that said that a Kamala Harris, Bernie Sanders ticket would be the strongest ticket, that it would carry 49 states, every state except for Florida. I don't know what these Democrats are smoking. It's very clear, however, that there are no more centrists in the Democrat Party. It is now the party of AOC and Jasmine Crockett and Uncle Bernie, and yes, the Ayatollah Mamdani. The words moderate Democrat is an oxymoron. The idea that the Democrat Party of Harry Truman, who is, after all, the true father of Israel, will not stand up for Israel today tells you how far that party has fallen. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, visits Russia once again for last-minute peace talks. With President Trump's deadline for Russia looming, he is sending his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, who I saw 2 Saturdays ago at Trump's golf club in D.C., back to Russia to engage in another, hopefully final round of peace talks with the Putin regime. Witkoff plans to go to Russia on Wednesday or Thursday of this week. President Trump issued a 50-day ultimatum to Putin last month, telling the Russian leader that sanctions and tariffs were on the way if he did not accept a peace deal. Trump cut that deadline to 10 days last week as part of his growing anger towards Putin for his increasingly aggressive tactics against Ukraine. Trump has given comments recently expressing more sympathy for the Ukrainians as they are shelled heavily by the Russians and steadily losing land in the brutal war effort that shows no signs of abating. The Kremlin released a statement saying that they would welcome Witkoff in Russia. They also said that Putin would finally be willing to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky following the completion of preparatory work at the expert level. Now, in diplomat speak, it's hard to know exactly what that means, but hopefully it's not just more obfuscation or Russian bluster. we should all be praying for the success of Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, an incredibly able man, one of his most laudatory voices for less U.S. interventionism in foreign policy within the Trump administration, as he embarks on this important peace mission that may be our last chance to stop more U.S. involvement in the Russia-Ukraine debacle that happened because of Biden's administration and his inherent weakness. If the United States was not pushing Ukraine into NATO in violation of two different treaties we signed, the Budapest Memorandum and the Minsk Accords, there would be no war in Ukraine today. The claim by some that Vladimir Putin wants to gobble up all of Ukraine, and then he's going to take Poland, and then France, and then Germany, is patently nonsense. Look at it from this point of view. We agreed when the Russians agreed to the unification of East and West Germany not to push Ukraine into NATO, which really is defined as not allowing U.S. supplied NATO missiles on the ground in Ukraine pointed at Russia. Why is this different than when Nikita Khrushchev in 1962 mounted Russian missiles 90 miles off our shore in Havana aimed at the United States? President John F. Kennedy did not react well to that. We were told that Kennedy faced Nikita Khrushchev down and that the Russian leader removed those missiles. We learned 50 years later that a secret deal was made in which the United States removed our NATO missiles from both Turkey and Italy, shifting the balance of power in Europe in return for an agreement with Khrushchev that included no on-site inspections. Eisenhower's last ambassador to Cuba, Earl E.T. Smith, who later served as the mayor of Palm Beach, Florida, believed to his death that the missiles were never actually removed. We pray for Envoy Witkoff, and we pray for peace. Donald Trump works every day for peace, and every American, regardless of party, should be praying for his success. Meanwhile, the disgraced FBI Director Christopher Wray has now finally officially received a criminal referral to the Department of Justice for the various nefarious acts that occurred at his behest during his many years in power at the FBI. The Oversight Project submitted the criminal referral for the alleged charges of obstruction, false statements, and corrupt actions in two different scandals. One, the foreign interference in elections, and the anti-Catholic discrimination by the FBI. The criminal referral points to two times that Wray blatantly lied while giving testimony before Congress. He lied in September of 2020 when he said the FBI had not seen any kind of coordinated national voter fraud effort. That was false. Recent revelations from a whistleblower who has coordinated with the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, has proven the statement to be false. Wray then said in March 2021 that there was no widespread evidence of voter fraud that would have affected the outcome. But FBI Director Kash Patel revealed that many thousands of counterfeit U.S. driver's licenses were seized by Customs and Border Protection in July of 2020, with intelligence determining that this was being done with the purpose to subvert the elections. Wray insisted that that never happened. Wray's FBI buried the report deep in the bowels of the FBI. This seems to be an open and shut case. It is time to put Christopher Wray behind bars where he belongs. Meanwhile, the Smithsonian gets rid of propaganda about the Trump impeachment. After removal of funding from National Public Radio, other institutions are now scrambling to avoid being next on the chopping block. As a result, the Smithsonian Museum, which is, of course, the U.S. government's Museum of History, is removing a propaganda-written exhibit about President Trump's impeachment. The National Museum for American History announced that they will be retooling the exhibit to remove the extreme bias and make it more about all presidential impeachments throughout time rather than just singling about Trump. Restoring the Truth and Sanity to American History is the executive order that President Donald Trump issued, which put Vice President J.D. Vance in charge of denying funds to any organization with exhibits or programs that degrade shared American values, divide Americans based on race, or promote programs or ideologies inconsistent with federal law and policy. The career bureaucrats and ideological paper pushers in Washington, D.C. are scrambling because of President Trump's bold, visionary leadership. And a federally taxpayer-funded museum is not the place for propaganda. Meanwhile, Tulsi Gabbard, the director of national intelligence, says that Operation Mockingbird is still very much in place. Tulsi Gabbard continues to confirm our worst fears that the deep state and systematic corruption in Washington, D.C., this time confirmed by deep state control over mass media outlets similar to the CIA's infamous Operation Mockingbird program, still exists. Information Mockingbird, first revealed in the 1960s, showed that the Central Intelligence Agency was paying reporters to twist the news based on a narrative provided by the government. It was actually Carl Bernstein, writing for Rolling Stone magazine, that first revealed the stunning facts about Operation Mockingbird. You see, Woodward and Bernstein, probably the two most famous journalists of our day, had a falling out over money, and once Woodward announced that he was going to go on a lucrative tour, but he wasn't taking his sidekick Bernstein with him, Bernstein wrote a stunning article for Rolling Stone magazine which completely exposed the fact that our intelligence agencies were paying reporters at the New York Times, at the Washington Post, at the Wall Street Journal, and also in the three news networks to twist the news based on the government's desired narrative. Gabbard said last week, there are people within the intelligence community who believe that their will is more important than the will of the American people, and they continue to weaponize intelligence by leaking to their friends within the mainstream media with the intent of undermining President Trump's agenda. If you're just tuning in, I'm Roger Stone. You're tuned into the Stone Zone, and we'll be back with more bombshell reports on American politics on the other side.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative.
On the Red Apple Podcast Network.
And we're back in the Stone Zone. The Food and Drug Administration is issuing stricter rules on opioids to better emphasize and explain the risks associated with their long-term use in their drug labeling policies. The FDA announced these changes follow a public advisory committee meeting in May that reviewed data showing serious risks such as misuse, addiction, and other fatal and non-fatal overdoses for patients who use opioids over long periods of time. Drug labels will now be more detailed, showing clear and accurate risk information, a summary of study results over risks of addiction and overdose, and potential misuse guidelines. Labels will also make it clear that higher dose levels come with elevated risk to drug users. This will help Americans become better informed consumers of drugs after being regularly lied to by drug manufacturers in the past, such as when Purdue Pharma told prescription drug users that their OxyContin pills were non-addictive. This FDA decision is one step closer to bringing what I think is an out-of-control pharmaceutical industry to heel. Credit once again to HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy in his struggle to make America healthy again. I saw when my own father was dying of cancer how deleterious the effect of opiates were on him. It was not until my sister and I decided to try to get him medicinal cannabis that his appetite returned and his pain was alleviated. That's why I have long favored the descheduling of cannabis. Today it is a Schedule 1 drug. Others argue it should be a Schedule 3 drug. I think since it has been legalized in 38 states for medicinal use, the truth is it should be descheduled entirely. Meanwhile, we now know the truth about how Russiagate started. The annex of Special Counsel John Durham's investigation into the origins of Russiagate is now fully known to the public, and it shows how the campaign of Hillary Clinton and the Clinton-era Democrat Party was guilty from the start. The DNC chairwoman, Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who, it reminds any man who's been married more than once of his first wife, worked with Leonardo Bernardo of George Soros' Open Society Foundation to create the phony Steele dossier. Memos declassified this past week show that members of the Democrat National Committee and top Soros operatives were openly colluding to create this false narrative in order to deflect from Hillary Clinton's own illegal email strategy. So what began as a desperate campaign tactic morphed into one of the largest and most unethical conspiracies in the political history of the United States. The Durham Annex files had been found in burn bags by FBI Director Kash Patel in a hidden room at FBI headquarters that was sealed off during the days of co-conspirator James Comey. It is amazing that these incredible documents were not destroyed. Perhaps it was because of bureaucratic incompetence or confusion, but these crucial files tell the story. Not only did the Democrat National Committee under Chairwoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz cheat Senator Bernie Sanders out of the Democrat nomination. By the way, we're still waiting for the vote count in the 2016 California Democrat primary. It's never had a result announced, but Debbie Wasserman Schultz also employed the Awan brothers. Those were two IT consultants that she hired when warned by the Capitol Hill police that they were under investigation for stealing both data and money through the House website. Wasserman Schultz changed their status from consultant to employee so they would continue to have access to the U.S. House of Representatives website. They went on to not only steal data, but also steal money, and they were both charged. My question is an obvious one. Why wasn't the chairwoman, Deborah Wasserman Schultz, charged with them as an accessory to that crime? After all, when she changed their status, it allowed them continued access to the House website, which facilitated a multi-million-dollar crime. The Awan brothers both fled the country, and nobody has been held accountable. This is just one of the many crimes that are being exposed, but also involved here is the absolute proof that Hillary Clinton herself, we knew this from the WikiLeaks disclosures, but we now know it from the declassified documents. Hillary Clinton herself reviewed and approved the entire Russian collusion hoax. Maybe it was because Bill and Hillary Clinton had far more Democrat presidential campaign experience than Donald Trump, or maybe it was because they hoped against hope that they could unseat Donald Trump and seat their cohort, Vice President Mike Pence. But they have failed, and the largest dirty trick in American political history is now completely and totally exposed. Thanks for joining us today in the Stone Zone. Until tomorrow, God bless you and Godspeed.
Thanks for listening to The Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear The Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?
Greg Kelly here for Colonial Metals Group, China's leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II, one that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Go to freegoldguide.com/Kelly or call 800-655-5186 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.
Roger Stone here for Colonial Metals Group. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Go to freegoldguide.com/stone or call 800-747-6589 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold, and it's 100% tax-free.